Our next presentation in the Learning Lounge is 5 Steps to Successful Lead Generation Campaigns. From Media Properties Holdings and Lead Generation Technologies, here's Preston Haglin. Preston?
Thank you. All right. There we are. All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon. Hope everyone's shaking some of the cobwebs off from last night. So I'm Preston Haglin, President of Lead Generation Technologies. And today we're going to go over 5 steps to successful lead generation campaigns. In particular, we're going to look at kind of our basic framework that we implement when we launch any new vertical or lead generation campaign. So with a name like Preston, I figured I'd stick close to my alphabetic roots. So we have 5 Ps that we like to shape our framework. And we've implemented these across any number of lead generation campaigns. We primarily look to drive consumers for service-oriented industries, everything from the senior services sector to financial services and legal. So the 5 Ps, so prepare your plan, pursue your prospects, perform experiments, patch the leaky funnel, and perfect the campaign. It's not a linear framework, but one that obviously you repeat and iterate on as you move through. So with preparing your plan, this is probably where we spend about 80% of our effort, because even though the plan never works out like you want it to, it's important to be able to understand where you need to shake and move as you come up with obstacles. So the first point is really defining the metrics for your lead generation campaign very clearly. And it's not just the obvious ones like what's my cost per lead or my conversion rate, but it's also understanding the load time on your websites, or the answer time with your call centers, making sure that you don't put up any necessary roadblocks for your consumers, making sure to define what those are and how you're going to measure them in advance of the campaign. If you get stuck, use the consumer experience, travel through the lead generation funnel, ask yourself, at this step in the marketing process, why would I become disenchanted with this offer and leave the funnel? Make sure you have, with regards to that, you've got your metrics in place. Make sure you have a funnel map for success. So it's not important that the actual successful campaign plays out exactly as you anticipate it will, but certainly understanding key benchmarks so you know where to focus your fine-tuning efforts as you go through. And then the most important piece with any plan, I believe, is the anticipation of the potential solutions, not just of problems and their related solutions. Not just, what if I don't get enough response from my television creative? Or what if I experience tremendous funnel drop-off after a page 2 a funnel? But what am I going to do in response to those? How am I, do I have enough budget to experiment with multiple television creatives? Or am I going to have to focus down the funnel somewhere? How am I going to solve each of these problems in advance? And then using your budget to set checkpoints. Don't just go out there and say, I'm going to test this campaign with $10,000, $20,000, but be more specific. I'm going to use $5,000 to make sure I get an acceptable response rate so that the rest of the funnel works. So it's not just a timeline, but also in terms of dollars and allocating them to measure and react. So pursuing your prospects, and again, a lot of these things are going to be obvious, but it's critical that you are diligent about them when implementing your plan. So focus on every response to your creative as though it was gold, right? Making sure that if it goes into a call center, that you're not allowing those people to stay on hold for 45 seconds. right? And that's a funnel killer right off the bat. Making sure your site isn't built with a technology that prevents people from an iPhone accessing it. And gaining permission. Obviously, we have an intense regulatory environment, some new regulations coming out October 16th with regards to permission, remarketing, especially with the use of mobile phones and the permissions you need in advance. Gain the permissions, though, and then make sure that you follow up with those consumers. Not everyone's going to convert the first time they make a phone call or visit a website. Consider exit messages and chats online. Consider callbacks, SMS campaigns, email remarketing. And if all else fails, find an adjacent offer to help funnel the consumer into a related insurance offer or a free credit report to help defray some of your marketing expense. Okay, so performing experiments, this is obviously the key to really fine-tuning. As you go through the funnel, you're going to find, all right, well, my conversion rate isn't exactly what my funnel success plan looked like. How am I going to fix that? So some of the things that we've done, we've looked at incorporating video spokespersons on websites, multiple creative iterations, but across all of these different aspects, make sure you're testing with a purpose, make sure you're controlling your environment. If you're going to A/B test 2 television creatives, don't use the old phone numbers on the original creative because it's got drag, and we don't want that to skew your results, right? And also determine what that success looks like in advance. Because at the end of the day, you're going to run your experiments, you're going to get your data back, and you're going to sit around the table. And depending on everyone's agenda, if you haven't determined what metric success looks like in advance, everyone will have their own spin depending on what their agenda is. So be very specific. Success for this experiment looks like moving the conversion rate on inbound telephone calls from 9% to 10%. And there's various reasons why that's not going to happen, and you can address those, but that's what success looks like, so you have an objective measure. Okay, and then with regards to patching the leaky funnel. So over time, you're sending calls in, various things are going to break down, whether it's the answer time at the call center, or it's all of a sudden your website experiences difficulty and you experience some funnel leak there. So target the biggest areas that can correct your overall funnel and start fixing them. Some of the usual suspects: is it plugged in? So did you forget to import 3 days worth of data? It sounds obvious again, but every time my mom calls me and asks me why her computer won't turn on, I ask her if it's plugged in, and 9 times out of 10, you forgot to plug it in. So make sure it's plugged in. Make sure, again, call center, load times, your response mechanisms. Are you expecting mental gymnastics? An 877 number on a television creative with 7 distinct digits in 30 seconds? That's pretty hard for any of us to kind of track. So, is that a reasonable expectation of the consumer? Is it localized to one media segment, or is it holistic across the campaign? And then there are the hidden villains, if you will. All of a sudden, everyone decides they want to run a similar offer. Everyone wants to do mortgage this month, so the airwaves are flooded with, television commercials about mortgage. Your cross-channel, is everyone not going through the anticipated response mechanism? So in other words, you anticipate them coming in through a phone call, and they end up going to your website. Are you able to allocate the cost effectively? Script confusion, or just too many options. Do you have a website that looks beautiful, but you give the consumer 7 different ways to interact with you, when really all you want is their information so that you can walk them through the next step in the funnel? And then finally, perfecting the campaign. So, this is where you're doing things like dialing in the media costs. And for some people, that might mean negotiate harder. How low can I get the rates? That's not necessarily the right solution here. Maybe you have a spot that drives really high converting leads, but it's on a network that just costs more. So it's got to be mindful that you get what you pay for. and more leads doesn't necessarily lend itself to a successful long-term campaign. Clean up your experiments. You've added a bunch of web code to measure A/B tests, and now you've decided the winner. Don't just leave that code hanging around. That can gum up the performance of your site. Make sure to clean it up, reset, document the results, and then go back to the basics and start asking the questions again. For phase 2, what does success look like? Develop your plan and iterate. So that's what we have today. If you have any questions or just want a copy of the deck, you can reach me at preston.haglin@mph.tv, or look for an upcoming series where we kind of delve into more details and concrete examples of many of the pieces of the framework we discussed today. Thank you.